Hello and good evening to this webinar in which we are going to cover our next topic in which we are covering the cloud services model in which we'll cover IaaS, PaaS and SaaS. Let me just get the right link here. Oh, okay, so let's get going. Great. Yeah, so as you know, we have been doing this webinar series in which we want to cover how we can build our own cloud from scratch. The idea is to basically um, see if kind of cover all the building blocks so that once you understand how you can build your own cloud, understanding other cloud provider would become very easy. We can just um, kind of look at the cloud provider specific details and perform our stuff. Let me share my screen here and then we'll get going. Yeah. So as you know that we are doing this webinar series in which we have been covering few topics. So we have already covered the first three topics in which we talked about the cloud computing introduction, then virtualization, and in the last uh, webinar we did what are containers and orchestration. And today we are covering what are the cloud service model, which are as PaaS and SaaS primarily. Of course, there are more, but we are going to focus on this today. And there are a few others topics which we are going to cover in the coming weeks or coming months, and eventually we'll see how we can build our own self-hosted cloud, right? So with that, let's just get back to the slide deck of the or the first session so that we can review what are the things there, the basics of the cloud, and then we'll get into our topic. But before that, let me do a quick intro about myself, and then we'll take it from there. So my name is Nipendra, and I'm founder of Cloudiga. I have over 2 decades of industry experience. Um, and I have worked in different domains. Started my career as system administration, then I did support engineering for 3 years. Then I did kernel and file system development, and then just before before I quit at Red Hat, I was doing the performance benchmarking for or performance engineering for Gluster and OpenShift. I published a book on Docker Cookbook in 2015, and also published the first Kubernetes introduction course for the CNCF, which was taken by more than 200,000 users across the globe. And I'm also organizer of KCD Bangalore. So we have been doing this event for the last 3 years. And this year we just finished last month. Okay, so with that, let's just quickly do a quick review of what are the different service models. And then we are going to look at the demo of all of these so that you get the hang of it. So I think this is the slide deck from the last session. So I'll just quickly run through it. And then, so we talked about what is cloud computing earlier, the brief history about cloud computing, traditional versus cloud computing. So already we all really covered these topics, and you can always go back to the first webinar and look at what are these things. But let's kind of jump into our topic of today, which are the different cloud service model. Let me quickly go there. Deploy model is fine. I think we already covered all of this. Yeah. So we'll start from here. So we're going to look at brief intro here, and then we'll look at the demo after that. So now there are different cloud service models. So as a user, we access the cloud in different ways. We can use our browser, we can use our mobile app, we can use our physical machines like bare metal and so on. And from there, we can access our cloud and we can access different services here. So as you can see that what we mentioned here is SaaS, which is software as service, PaaS, which is platform as service, and then we have IaaS, which is infra as a service. And of course, all of these things on top of the cloud deployment model. So again, we don't need to kind of be on the public cloud to get all of these features. We can be on our private cloud as well. So think about, we can configure all of these things at our home, at our company's premises, and we can still provide all of these services. So it doesn't matter where the cloud is being configured, we can offer all of these services to our end users, or the clients what we have there. The first of all, what is IaaS, which is infra as service. So now typically in this we are going to give the machines. Think about, we are giving the compute resources, which is your CPU and memory. So we are going to give these resources to our end users. So when somebody access this as service, they are expecting from the cloud provider, which again can be public, private, or hybrid cloud. They're expecting to get some VM instances, using which we can get a OS. We'll get a resource. Like for example, we can say we are configuring a VM of 2 GB RAM, 2 CPU system, and then we can assign it to our end user. The end user can go and then have the option to install the respective OS. Maybe it is Windows, Linux, whatever it is, and on top of it, they can deploy whatever they would wish on top of it. So as a cloud provider, we're just giving you the bare metal resources, or not the VM resource, and on top of that, the client can decide what they want to do. So of course, we look at the demo of this. So the example of IaaS is AWS EC2 instances, DigitalOcean Droplets, Azure instances, and Google Compute Engine. So we can go to any cloud provider and then request for these resources. Then we have PaaS, which is platform as a service. The idea behind this is, now this is on top of the IaaS. So now our end user is not interested to manage the resources, the VMs and so on. My end user says that, okay, give me somewhere to host my application. So for example, if I'm deploying a blog website, right, I just want the blog website to be up and running all the time. So similarly, there can be different kind of apps, be it Python, Java, whichever apps you think of. I want to have all of these apps. And now once I have the Git repo of my code, if I make a change, I want to have that particular app to be deployed on the cloud with the help of PaaS. And now the cloud provider itself would take care of the resources. So of course, I can define some minimum resources. Let's say I want to start my application with 2 GB of RAM. So for example, no, maybe what I'll say that when I'm deploying my application, I'll just have a Git repo in which I have the Python code and so on. And then from there, I can go and say, go and deploy on a specific cloud provider. Now there you can have an option whether either you can just forget about the resource, what is coming behind the scene. We can just simply focus on our Git repo and from there get deployed. But of course, we can also configure the minimum resource requirement for our application. So when I'm deploying it, I would say at least have the resource for my application deployment of, let's say, 2 CPU and 1 GB or whatever it is of RAM. And based on that, that is going to be my minimum requirement. And now once I have deployed my app, now if I need more resources, my cloud provider would take care of it. They would scale it up. The resources, they can add more RAM, CPU as per the demand. So all of these things are done by the cloud provider. So I just kind of focus on my code like my Git repo. I update my code there, and everything else follow through with the help of PaaS. So again, I'll give the example of this, all the demo of these. The example of PaaS is Elastic Beanstalk from AWS, Vercel, Google App Engine, Heroku, and we can also see DigitalOcean also have some of these offerings there. And there are other providers as well. I'm not saying just these ones, but there are other providers also there for the PaaS. And then SaaS, I think all of you are using Gmail. So Gmail is an example of the SaaS, software as service. So now here, my end user even don't care about writing the code and so on. I would just pay, or I can get a free service as well. And then after that, I'm just going to have my resource available with me. So whatever, it's the Gmail, it's a Canva, it's a CRM tool, it's a Zoom. So all of these are the SaaS offering. So now, as a user, I don't care about how the code is being written. I just pay a price, and based on the price, I'm going to get a given service. Correct? That is an example of SaaS, which is software as a service. So all of these software, as I said, Zoho, Canva, all of these examples are of that, right? Yeah, and if you have any question, please put on the chat so that we can I can take those questions as well if you have any. Okay. Now, so here is the comparison of it. So as you can see here, what are these different offerings are there, and what we are going to manage and what our provider is going to manage. So provider means our cloud provider. So of course, when you are setting up everything on your own, so because your internal team would also manage, let's say, the entire stack, right? Even the internal cloud as well. They have to manage all of these things, starting from networking, storage, server, and everything. But of course, if you are using any of the cloud providers, then the red ones are managed by the cloud provider only, right? So all of this particular part, setting up networking, storage, servers, virtualization, all has been taken care by my cloud provider. Correct? As a user, as a client of that as, I'm going to manage OS, what kind of apps I'll deploy on it, what kind of data I put up, and what application I'm deploying on top of it. So in this case, I'm going to take care of all of these things. Now, if I'm into the PaaS offering, then even the OS, middleware, and the runtime is taken care by the cloud provider. I, as an end user, just focus on our application. I'll just write the code, and it would get deployed on my cloud provider, right? In case of SaaS, I'm not even worried about anything at all. I just pay a price and I'll get a service. So this is how the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS are there. I hope all of this makes sense, right? Okay, so with that, let us now look at the demo of all of these three things. So of course, the example of SaaS is pretty simple, that you open a Gmail and you get a service. I may be given another example of it as we continue, but SaaS example is very clear to everyone, right? So what I'll do now is I'm just going to go to my cloud provider, and what we'll do is we are going to look at the example of as first of all. I'm going to use the DigitalOcean as my cloud provider because it's pretty straightforward to use. That is why I've chosen it. But as I mentioned earlier, you can pick up any of the cloud provider and do that. So our end goal here is to deploy an instance, deploy a VM instance, right? So of course, maybe we look at deployment of the VM on DigitalOcean first, and then we look at the example of AWS and so on, like how we'll do it and so on, right? So now I just logged into my account of DigitalOcean. Currently, I am not running any resources here; it's all empty. So in terms of DigitalOcean, our VMs are called as droplets. So now here we are deploying our droplets or the VMs here. So I'll deploy the VMs, and just to kind of be very clear, in some of the cloud providers now you can also provision the bare metal machines as well. Like I think AWS and Google Cloud supports that. So you can go and request a physical machine. So rather than getting a VM, you can actually get a complete bare metal system from the cloud provider, and then you can configure it and manage it as well. Okay. So fine. So let's now look at the demo of the IaaS, which is infra as service. So now we are into our cloud provider, and here I'm going to set up an instance. So I'll click on droplets here. It gives tutorials and all that stuff perfectly fine, but I'll click here on create droplet, which is nothing but creation of VMs. So as you can see here, first of all, what I have to do is I would be choosing the region. So this is similar to any cloud provider as well. So whenever deploying an application on any cloud provider, as all the cloud providers are going to have different geographical data centers, you can choose where you would deploy the given or given server, right? Given VM. So now here we can pick up from these regions, any one of them we can pick up. So we'll pick up Bangalore because we are here right now. Now, once you have chosen the given region, and of course, in some cases, right, when you're deploying these VMs or infra of yours, there may be requirement for compliance reasons that you deploy the given cloud resources in the respective geo only. So here we are saying that I'm going to deploy in Bangalore, because yeah, we are in India here. Now then we can configure our network. So I have a default network here, but uh, so VPC is virtual private. I forgot this last time, but yeah. So VPC is nothing but is your private network in which you can configure the private IP addresses and so on. And based on that, your VM which you want to create would get the IP. Correct. So, so I'm going to kind of pick up my VPC. Currently, I have only default one, but I can configure something else as well. Then here we have the different OS to choose from. So when I'm going to say that I'm going to deploy, I'm going to get an infra, but then I'm going to say that uh, choose the respective OS. I'm saying that, okay, deploy the given OS, which can be Fedora, Debian, or whatever I would choose. And I can choose different version as well. Then I can, if I have a custom image, so for example, if I have built my own image, which I also want to use uh, with the with the cloud provider, I can do that as well. So in this case, I don't have any custom image, so I'll go with the marketplace only, and I'm going to choose the one of the OS from here. So let's just go and choose from here. Okay, so there are three options actually: OS, marketplace, and custom image. So I think it's not very clear, but we'll choose the OS here, and we'll pick up the Ubuntu here. We can choose the version, and now if I come down further, now what we are choosing here is um, what kind of droplet size I want to have. So, of course, when you are trying to get a resource from the cloud, it is going to have a price as well, right? So, based on the price, you can get different capacity based in environment, right? So, what we are saying here is I want to choose the basic one, but I can choose general purpose, optimized one, and so on. So, I'll pick up the basic one for now. And here again, I have multiple options. I want to pick up the regular SSD, premium, and all that stuff. So I'll pick up the regular one for now. And then I can choose from different offerings here. So as you can see, I have an offering here with the $12 per month, in which I can choose 2 GB of RAM and one CPU based system. I can go towards the left and maybe choose the minimum one as well. But here in this case, the minimum one is $6 per month for me, which is going to give me 1 GB, one CPU, right? So what we have done, let's just quickly review here. So I have gone to a cloud provider, which can be anything. Then I am deciding to have, I decide to have my region. Then in that region, I'm deciding what kind of OS I want to have eventually on my system, on my VM. Then I'm deciding the size of the cloud provider, size of the VM which I'm going to create here. So I did that as well. And then I'm going to pick up additional volumes if I want. So I'll come back to in the next webinar. But for now, I want to configure whether I want to enable authentication to my instance password with the password or passwordless. So I can choose to have the passwordless for now. And then um, I'm just going to add additional thing if I want to have, but I'll skip it for now. Then here it is saying that currently I'm having only droplet one, but I can click here and choose multiple of them as well. So I'm deciding to have multiple um, VM creation here. So I can give a name as well. So let's say I can give here the VM1 and then VM2, right? I can choose a different tag as well, whatever tag I want to give, just to kind of refer them easily. So I would say, let's say demo, right? So now what is happening here is I have chosen all of my configuration, and now you can see here it has been set up. So I just go here and say create droplet. So what is now happening behind the scene, my cloud provider is going to set up the instances for me on the cloud. So I have kind of gone to my cloud and requested the instances, and now it has set up the VMs for me. So now it is creating the VMs, which is going to be Ubuntu machine, and it is going to have the respective configuration what I have given. And then once these VMs would come up, I would get one private IP with the VPC, and I'll get other IP, which is going to be public IP through which I can access it. So let me just show it to you. So now my VMs have been created, and I have got the respective IP as well. So now what I can do is I can actually log into this instance. Let me just get my terminal here. Yeah. I'll get my IP address of my instance. And because I have given my um, public keys already to the instance, I can log in without giving a password here. So you'll see that I would now be able to log into the instance. So this is the example of IaaS in which I have requested the instances and they have been provided to me. I hope all of this makes sense. Okay. So now similarly, I can choose to log into a second machine as well. So now here I have just kind of chosen the CPU configuration, memory configuration, deployed my instance, and now I am now inside that VM. And now after once I have the VM, I am free to perform all the steps whatever I would wish. So here my cloud provider is giving me complete flexibility to install whatever software I would wish to have on this instance. Okay, so just going to increase the font size here. Okay, so I hope this is visible now. Still not, so I'll just, yeah. So what I have done here is I have got into the VM instance of my cloud provider. So I'm on this instance here. Now, what I was telling is um, cloud provider is now giving me complete flexibility what I want to configure on this. So they are not kind of blocking you or telling you what you can or what you cannot do. They just have given you the instance. You just now free to do whatever you would wish. So let's see if I want to install a web server on this. So I'll do that right now. I'm just going to run the apt update command to get the latest meta information about my Ubuntu distribution. And then I'm going to install a software called Nginx, just a web server. And with that, I'm going to set up a web server and then I'm going to show it to you how I can access my application on top of it. So I'll just say apt install Nginx. I'm going to install my software of Nginx. It is getting installed. And once this particular software gets installed, so again, it is up to me what I want to install here, right? So I'll just check the status of it. So systemctl status Nginx. It is now running. So now what I can do is if I go to my VM instance IP address, what I have chosen here, and open it, you'll see that a web server has been configured. So you can see here, I have created the instances on the cloud, and from there, I could now choose to install whatever software I would wish, and it is now on my instance and I can access it. So this is what is IaaS. Now, all the responsibility of the software is on me. So for example, if lot of customer comes and they start accessing this website with like uh, 10K requests per second and so on, my server or my application might have an issue because I just have the instance which is of just, I think, 1 GB of RAM or 2 GB of RAM, which is just 1 GB of RAM. So this cannot handle the request of whatever they're coming, whatever count they're coming in, right? Because I have paid only for this instance, I will get the service with regard to this instance only, correct? So scalability and everything should be configured by me or my as an end user. My cloud provider will not be responsible for that. So it is going to be an issue if you see that if you deploy an app, a lot of customers come to your site and site hangs, right? It is going to be an issue for you. That is where we can go with the option of PaaS, in which we would deploy our application, and once we deployed our application, the scaling up, scaling down of the application would be taken care by my cloud provider. That is PaaS, which we'll see just in a few minutes, right? But being said that, why would somebody choose IaaS? Because I'll have flexibility to install my own software, configure on my own way, right? And of course, it's not that you cannot configure auto scaling on top of this. We can configure. It's just that it's an additional configuration which you have to do. But we can configure auto scaling and all that stuff on our way as well. So as can do that as well, but it's an additional work. So with that, I think we have covered what is as part. If there are any questions, please put down the comments so I can answer them. So with that, I'll just kind of log out from here. And now if I have to kind of remove my instances, pretty straightforward. I would just go ahead and say destroy, and this would destroy my instance. And you can see here how easy it is to create and destroy an instance on the cloud. The similar steps can be done on any other cloud as well. I just showed you the example of DigitalOcean, but it is something similar on the other cloud as well. So I'm just deploying both the instances, and I would be just asked to pay only for this minimum time which I have used right now. So I would not be paying for entire day and so on. No, I would be just paying whatever the amount of time I have used the instances, right? This is what we have the example of as. Now, let us now look at the example of PaaS, in which we look at the example of Vercel. With the Vercel, I'm going to deploy my application. So Vercel is a provider of PaaS, platform as a service. So let me log into Vercel. And you can log in along with me right now if you're doing for the first time. Let me just log out here. So you can also open the vercel.com as with me, and we can deploy the website right now together. So of course, I can sign up with one of my Git credentials. So I can use GitHub, and let me use one of my account here. So I'm logged in as the CloudYuga user on this Vercel environment. Now, Vercel has said that it's a PaaS offering. So here, what we'll be doing is we'll be choosing our application. What application I want to deploy at scale? The setting up the infra part, what instance, what is it going to run on VM, container, whatever, it would be all taken care by the PaaS provider. So for now, I'll go and choose here, add new. So I'm doing it along with you right now. So I'll just choose one of the project here. And there are multiple websites like that, templates are being given. So I can, of course, start with by giving my own Git repo, but better we'll pick up a template from here and deploy our application on this particular Vercel cloud. So I'll pick up the template here, and let's pick up one of it. Let's just pick up let's pick up the e-commerce app itself. So I'm just going to pick up this e-commerce app, or I think I already have it. Let's pick up something else. So let's pick up blog starter kit, for example. Okay. So I've chosen this particular link here. Again, I'm doing it with you right now. So now this particular template I have chosen here, and I'll simply say deploy here. So think about what is going to happen now is, think about you have a Git repo, and on that Git repo, once you make a change, it gets deployed. So we're just going a next step further. So we don't have any source code available right now on our cloud provider, on our Git repo. So what we'll be doing is we have chosen a template, and that template is going to create a Git repo for me. So under my CloudYuga account on my Git, I don't have any project like blog starter kit here. Let me go and search. I'll go to my repository and search. You'll see here, I don't have any repo like this right now, correct? But now because I'm using Vercel, it's giving me a template. So I've chosen the template here. So I'll just go one more step back. So what I did is I went to kind of went to this particular site of Vercel. I'm did the template browsing here. I picked up the template of the blog starter kit here. I clicked on this, and then I'm just saying deploy here. Now while deploying, it's asking me we need to create a Git repo. It can be a both public or private repo, whichever you would wish. I'll say private only for now. I'll say create. So what is now happening is, because I have linked my account with my Git, what is happening is this Vercel is going to create that repo for me. And after that, it would be deploying my application from that Git repo. So let's see. So I'll just go to my account again of this. And as you can see now, I have got my Git repo, which was not there earlier, because I have linked up with the Vercel. It has created the respective thing. So I have got the entire source code of the given template here. And now what is happening behind the scene? It is actually deploying it. So you can see here, it has now cloned that particular Git repo into the Vercel account, whatever it is. And it is now doing the build process of it. After the building, it would do a deploy, and it would do some checks and so on. And then I'll get a URL on which I can access it. So now I'm just uh, focusing on my code here, and after and remaining steps is done by my cloud provider. So you can see here my app has now been deployed. And if I go to the dashboard, my app has been deployed here. I can go to the dashboard, and there I would be getting a link which I can access. So you can see here I have got a URL here, and if I click on this URL, you can see that a site has been deployed with this particular URL here. So what is happening? Whatever the code is being on my Git repo, that is being deployed by the Vercel PaaS on the cloud, and it has given me a URL as well. So hope this part is clear. Now what we can do is we can modify some of the stuff here, and you would see that as I modify here, the Vercel is going to find out the change, and then it will redeploy my application again. So as a developer, I am now just worried about my code. Correct? I can change the theme, I can write a new blog, whatever it is. As I modify my code, that code automatically get deployed on my respective cloud PaaS offering, right? So let me go and kind of deploy. So let's see. So what we'll do here, I'm going to create one post here. So there's a post section here. So I'm going to create a post, or I'm going to modify one of it. Let's do whatever. So for now, let's try to modify the hello world here. Let's see here. So they're going to be post, learn how to pre-render. Let's just check what is this code here. Okay, so there is something here. Let me just look at one of the markdown file. So these are your blogs. Okay, for timing, let's just go and make a small change. And as I make a commit, you'll see that it's going to get deployed here. So I'll just go and modify the README file itself, and we'll see that as I make the change, it is going to be deployed. So I'll just go and make a minor change here. Let's say I'll just come down and just add here a demo section and save it. Now, because I'm modifying my code here, I'll just commit the change. Yeah, update and README. Yes, perfect. And as I commit the change, what is going to happen now? Because I did a code commit here, you will see that it is now started building right now itself. Because I made a code change, and that code change has triggered the building of my new image or my software, and eventually be deployed on the Vercel. So this is all happening very seamlessly. You modify the code, that code is picked up by the PaaS offering, and then it would deploy it. So that is how it is going to get deployed. Let's look at the README here and figure out how we can actually deploy our new uh, let's say whatever blog and so on. Let me just go back here. It's been deployed. Let's try to say how I can configure, how I can change the code or deploy one of my thing here, right? So let's see, read documentation here. pages, post. Okay, but hope you got the point here. I'm not modifying the code here, but hope you got the idea that if I modify anything on the code, the respective thing is going to get deployed on the cloud. So this is the example of PaaS where you connect your application with the PaaS provider. If you make the code change, it'll get deployed on the cloud. This is a very simple example of PaaS. So yeah, so this is there. Let's go back the example also. This is the example of PaaS. So we talked about as we talked about PaaS here. Now we can talk about SaaS, which is similar to like any provider. So we use Gmail, or if I can go and buy the service of any cloud provider, like for example, the Zoom, right? The Zoom is going to give me my own account through which I can log in and perform the meetings and so on. That's an offering of SaaS. So hope you got an idea of PaaS, SaaS, and as here. Um, I'll also show you one more thing here. So let me just quickly get it. So as you know that at Cloudica, we also provide some of these our labs here. So if I kind of go back here, so if I open the Cloudica website, and I can tell you how we are configuring our own SaaS offering as well. So what happens is once you are on the Cloudica website, and if you go and do any of the hands-on lab, so we have these hands-on lab on different topics. For example, if I pick up the topic of logging in Kubernetes, and now if I now go and say I am kind of want to kind of perform the steps, right? Whatever in this particular lab, I click on this lab setup button. So what is happening behind the scene is I am setting up the infra on my private cloud. So I told you an example of the public cloud right now, which is distillation I have used. But now what I'm saying is I have configured a private cloud, and while doing all of these hands-on labs or our courses, when the learner triggers the lab setup, we have configured our own cloud. And with that, you can see here, we'll see that a VM instance will come up on which we can interact with. So we'll see that in a few minutes. It is going to come up. Um, Okay. Meanwhile, talk about few more things. So now we just talked about three of these offerings, but there are others as well. So, like for example, all the cloud providers can provide additional services as well. For example, I can set up databases. So, like the way if I go to my cloud provider, I can request that give me a database service. So it's a database service. So I can just request a database server. So I create a button here, and this sets up the database cluster for me, which I can use for my backends, right? I can also set up my own functions, so which is fast function as a service. So I can configure like lambdas, right? So that is again we can configure on the cloud provider. So cloud not just gives you these three offerings, but can offer others like databases, functions, object storage, and so on as well. So there are more things the cloud can offer you, but primarily we kind of talk about as PaaS and SaaS there. So let's see if our lab has come up. Yeah. So as you can see now, the entire lab has come up, and I can actually work on this, right? So like the way we saw how we can get the VM instance on the cloud provider within this particular lab environment. We have done that for you, correct? So we have configured our own private cloud, and on the private cloud, when I create an instance, I'm offering you as a service to my learners, right? So like for example, if you want to kind of go and do any of these labs or the courses there, right, you can use our in-house built cloud and perform all these steps, correct? So this is an example of as which are there. So that is perfectly fine. um, Great. Any questions you guys have, please put them on the comments on the chat here. So I'll be able to answer that. Okay, so I know this particular topic or this particular kind of session was a bit small, but we are kind of going towards our goal where we're going to cover all the building blocks. So this kind of covered today all the cloud service models. In the next session, either we'll do the software defined storage or software defined network, which we're going to cover in 2 to 3 weeks from now, and then we're going to continue with the remaining topics. Um, so I hope you have found our today's topic useful and understood what are these different offerings as PaaS and SaaS, which which you can kind of use on the different clouds. What we can do maybe in the last few minutes here, we can go and look at the offering of different cloud providers as well. So for example, if I go to AWS EC2 instance offering, instance types there. So if I click on this, and I go to that compute resources of AWS, you can again see here AWS provides these different um, machine types here. So there are these M7G, T3, T2, and all that stuff. So there are different types of machines AWS provides, and from these different types, we can choose which one is optimal for us. Like the way we saw with DigitalOcean, that there are these general purpose, and they've given different name to it, different sizes. Similarly, on AWS, I can also see different instances type here with respect to their different configuration, like how many CPU I'm going to get, how many memory I'm going to get, the storage type, the network bandwidth, and the EBS bandwidth, and so on. So all of these things are coming with respect to AWS. So you will log into the AWS account and then create an instance there. So we can log into AWS. Similarly, we can go to GCP as well, Google Cloud instances. They'll again a different name. So you can again pick up whichever you would wish to choose, log into there, click a button, it would come up, and so on. But at the end of it, what they're doing is they're using the layer we talked about in the last session. So if you look at in our previous session, we talked about virtualization, right? Which is nothing but the provider for you, right? So what is this particular deployment model? Public, private, and hybrid cloud. Whatever we have here, all of these things are built on top of some kind of hypervisor. So we discussed about hypervisors in the previous webinar. So if you kind of go back and listen to that, you'll understand what is the hypervisors. And so what happens is typically they're going to get physical machines, they'll deploy hypervisor on that, they'll connect together, and then they'll give you the layers using which you can create the instances. That is what all happening behind the scene. So physical machines, virtualization, and then you have these API calls, like the way I made an API call to our private cloud. Similarly, you can make the API call to the public cloud, private cloud, whatever. It would create an instance and give it to you. That is all it is. So if you understood this particular part, I think we are kind of good for today. And in the next sessions, we are going to the cover our either the software defined storage or software defined networking, in which we will see that how we can virtually add more storage or give the storage to our applications uh, or then for we are deploying there. Similarly, or how we connect with respect to networking, how we can give the IP address to every VM and all that stuff that we want to cover in our coming webinars. So again, to kind of reach to our end goal, to set up our own private cloud at the end of it. Yeah. So hopefully this particular webinar was useful and you got some new learnings today, and it was worth of your time. Um, any questions? Please let me know how did you like this particular session. If you can just say thumbs up or something like that, that will be helpful. Okay, and do visit to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it so that you can get updated with the latest content what we are putting up there. Yeah. Okay. Uh, okay. That's it for today, guys. See you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Anushka. Thank you, Rahul. Okay, see you guys soon. Bye bye.